At Embla, we are inspired by transforming your ideas into revolutionary products that will change the way of life. Founded in 2009, Embla Software Innovation started its operation as a product development company and evolved into development partners for the Scandinavian region, creating an ecosystem of innovations. Driven by the outsourcing challenges of our cross-cultural connection, our productive team creates success stories under the extended office service concept. Our dedicated and talented minds with niche skills and deep expertise synergize with our Scandinavian teams to create a transparent environment. Embla Software Innovation. Innovation at work.
Hi guys. Hi everyone. After that exciting session on SpaceX by Joe Justice, we are coming safely down back to Earth. But it is in no way a less exciting talk that we have in store for you. Before we go on to the talk, let me introduce you. First up, I am Praja Dolevata, and I am the moderator for this session. And I would like to introduce the next speaker. So the next speaker we have is Priya Patra. So Priya by profession is a program manager at Capgemini, and she is also a mother of two, an author, blogger, a women's empowerment believer, dreamer, creator, and a futurist. Wow, that is a lot. An agile evangelist and a program manager spearheading the quality engineering India team for energy, utilities, and chemical sector. She also leads agile communities of practice within the organization of 800 members across 40 countries, evangelizing agile practices across all levels in the organization. She is a speaker for national and international conferences on digital, agile, and project management. And since January 2020, she has been building a women's community, and which is called Women's Power Up Network, a virtual community of around 800 women across the globe. Hashtag being good enough is amazing. Hashtag we power up. So without waiting any longer, let's move on to Priya Patra, shifting from best to next. Let us karaoke. Over to you, Priya.
Awesome, Praja. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. And yeah, let us move from best to next. Okay, so are you guys able to see my screen? Yeah, okay.
We can see.
All right. So yes, Praja did say a lot of things about me, but I like to call myself an agile evangelist only. I'm not an agile coach. I am a program manager, but I do learn stuff about agile from the ground, right? The practices that work, the principles that work within my teams. Yes. So let's see. We follow industry best practices in order to ensure we deliver value to our clients. Have you ever heard of this? Put on the chat window, yes, no. And Praja, you will have to help me with what the answers are coming on the chat. I am not monitoring the chat as of now. Have you heard of this before? And what do you see there on the chat, Praja?
Well, the same. Actually, we don't have any. Let's give a little bit of time for folk to
Okay.
to enter some info.
Sure.
So Jayanta Dayananda says yes.
Yeah, sure. I think you must have heard it before. And every time I go for a pre-sales call or I'm having a connect with our customers, right? I inevitably have this in my script. we follow the industry best practices, right? But do you think we really deliver value by just following the industry best practices? I mean, that's a question that I will leave up to you to ponder while we go through the presentation. Let me introduce you to Sapna. You know Sapna? Well, you must be knowing someone named Sapna. But who is Sapna? Sapna is an IT consultant, right? And she leads projects for large Fortune 10 organizations. And this organization has many in-house custom developed legacy applications, right? And as it is always with large organizations, they have many legacy applications. It was time for quarter closure. Every quarter closure, Sapna and her team works on a 20-hour shift for quarter closure activities. Now, I will not go into details on what activities, but I'm sure you guys must have experienced this kind of a phenomenon where people spent the hours for quarter closure activities. Sapna calls for a all hand deck with her team who has been chosen to support this activity. Team, are you all ready? And the team says, yeah, we have done this before multiple times. And the quarter closure activities are well defined. All steps are documented. So, we should be good. It has worked for years. And Sapna thinks to herself, well, I think so as well, because these best practices have been developed over a decade and it worked before. It takes a couple of days of support, but invariably it works. And of course, we haven't made much changes to the system as well. So I think it should work this time as well. It worked during the pandemic. So why shouldn't it work now? Now, come March 20, the first batch process is run. And this is a legacy system. So there are batch processes which are, kind of scheduled to run after another. The golden record was verified. Everything was good. And the next step was triggered. And imagine what happened. Boom! Everything was went to a standstill. They struggled. The team struggled to get a clarity. What has gone wrong? Something that was working for years doesn't seem to be working quite right now. The SWAT team comes into action. They start debugging and puts all the minds together. And while the team was debugging, Sapna thought to herself, wish we had asked ourselves, can we do it better? Rather than just relying on the run book that we have created. So it seems like due to the hybrid mode of working that came into being in 2022, early 2022, the golden record, which was considered to be golden, was no longer golden. The HR data seemed to have some amount of anomalies, which was uncalled for. Sapna thinks, wish we had questioned if there was a need to tailor this instead of just thinking, oh, it worked for years. Maybe we could have predicted such conditions. After all, I have such great minds who are working with me on the team, and wish we had looked at the data and taken some decisions and decided with the heart. Best practices don't seem to be so best right now, isn't it? The gist of this story is over-reliance on our best practices and the short circuit of innovation. I'm not saying that do not follow best practices. Best practices are, tried, tested solutions. And of course, this just, I feel it just leads to status quo thinking. If they are all doing it, why do we need to think outside the box, right? Why don't I just follow the way everyone else is following? So Let me kind of introduce you to these three principles, and you will see them at the bottom of your screen. Let me put on the laser pointer this one, which is, it worked for years, the herd mentality. Resist the herd mentality. Whenever you see a best practice, yes, sure, you should follow it. But ask yourself, can I do it better? Best practices are usually contextual. That means we might need to tailor it as far as part of our system, the knowledge of a team, the industry, the way the industry is evolved, right? So no size will fit all. Please look at it in your own context. And now that we have kind of looked at the best practice, we have tailored it, how do we know it is working? We have to be data driven. But is that all? Look at the data. Definitely, we should look at the data. But would we derive all decisions with data? May not be. We might have to think with our heart. We might have to bring in empathy. So it was time that Sapna and her team had to move beyond the best to the next. So here we go. Next practices are leads you to tomorrow's success. So let me recap this again. What did we speak about? We spoke about resisting the herd mentality. How can we do it better? We spoke about tailoring it so that, because we know no size fits all. They are contextual. Best practices best at that specific point of time within a specific knowledge and a given set of method and processes. So it might be a good idea to apply it as it is, but look at the context. Be data driven and drive your decisions with data, but decide with the heart. Now, of course, we have tailored our best practices, we have kind of implemented it, but is it working? It's time to relook at it and take a decision whether it is working or not. And of course, I think all this leads to agility all the way. So, are you ready to karaoke with me to shift from best to next? And how will this work? Of course, it's a different concept, so I'll explain to you. Before I move on to the next slide, I would request you to take a snapshot of this presentation, of this slide, right? So that you see a picture of your camera here, because everything that follows next will be based on this four principles that are highlighted on this slide. So kind of take a snapshot, take a picture, and keep it with you. So, and I'll pause for one moment to see whether you have taken the picture or not. If you want, if you're ready, just type on the chat window, yes, we are done, and we will move forward. And Praja, you will have to look at the chat again and let me know whether people have just, taken the snapshot or not.
Yes, folks, please do that and just let us know. I think that's
We'll
sufficient
move.
time. Yeah, we'll move on.
Yeah. So how do we karaoke, right? Let me explain the rules of the game, right? What we need to do is that here everyone participates. I'm not sure how many people are typing on the chat, but this presentation will work if there is participation. Uh, of course, there is no wrong, no right, because everyone participates like a karaoke, right? When you participate in a karaoke, you just sing along. No one looks at it whether you are speaking in the right tune or not. So that's how it is. There'll be a picture which will be displayed on the screen. See that picture and relate to one of the principles that we discussed a slide before, how to move from best to next. And what were those? They were, resist the herd mentality, tailor, driven by data, decided by the heart, and of course, agility all the way. And then be a poll which will be displayed on your screen. You can take the poll, answer on the chat the way you want to do it. But this is like, look at the picture, take the poll, and then we'll move on. Right. So, what is that we are going to, and of course we'll have lots of fun. And what is that we are going to, base that poll on? Again, a recap of what we discussed: resist hurt mentality, tailor, driven by data, decided by the heart, and agility all the way. So let us shift from best to next. How do we do that? Let us start the karaoke. Do you see a picture on your screen? Yes? Okay. So now let me know. Look at this picture. Take that poll on the Menti and let me know which principle you think relates to this picture. And we discussed about, resisting the herd mentality, tailoring, be data driven, but decide by the heart, and of course, be agile all the way. And I will now move on to see whether we are getting options on the chat or not. Okay, on the Menti or not. Well, the Menti seems to be empty as of now. I don't see anyone taking the poll. While you take this poll, I will narrate you a story, a very famous line by Benjamin Franklin. If everyone is thinking alike, no one is thinking, right? And how do we prevent this? Now, when you're looking at this poll, that's why I do not display the poll most of the time, because it leads to group things. So we'll go back to the picture again and ensure that you guys are not led into group thinking, but keep taking that poll. And how do we prevent this? Because if everyone starts thinking alike, no one is thinking, right? So have you heard of the 10th man rule? Oh, I'm not talking about cricket or anything like that. I'm talking about a specific rule which prevents group thinking or the herd mentality. The rule goes this way: if 9 team members who had the same information arrived at some conclusion, it is the duty of the 10th person to disagree. And I know that I read that it has been used in Israeli military intelligence. So, no matter how improbable it may seem, the 10th man has to start thinking about the assumption that other 9 were wrong. Can we apply this with our teams? I think we can. So what have I have done? So I have a risk management role which is rotating. We have assigned one person in the team per month. One person, not every time that person plays the 10th role. Otherwise, not be liked by anyone. Assign one person per month to dedicate some of their time actively seeking out new risk, threats, and opportunities, right? And have this individual act like a devil's advocate during the meetings. That is a 10th man rule. Now, what happens when this role can help us to look at a decision from different angles? And it will also help the team members to prevent group thinking, and it will help the team members to grow their own perspectives. However, there is a limiting problem with this limiting principle to the 10th man rule. We should not be paralyzed by eternal disagreement. This is where the role of an agile coach, scrum master comes into being, where we kind of ensure that the arguments are making some sense. And at some point of time, the devil's advocate will have to concede that his or her assumption about the others being wrong is false. And if we come to a conclusion, good. But in the process, we have discovered different angles of looking at a picture or at a decision. And that's the 10th man rule, which can help you to get rid of the group thinking, help you to get rid of the herd mentality. This is how it's one of the ways to resist herd mentality. Now, look at this picture. Now, there is no poll here. You will have to type on the chat window, and Prada will look at the chat and let us know what you guys are thinking about this picture. When you look at this picture, which principle comes to your mind about shifting from best to next? Think about it. Imagine a doctor prescribing a standard medicine based on some common symptoms without even carefully analyzing my ailment or my patient history. Will I like that doctor? Definitely not. Now, the doctor is using the best practices, he's leveraging the best practices. He knows the best medicine for the particular ailment, but he would really need to look at the patient's context before deciding which is the best medicine. And this reminds me of a story. Sneha is a developer, and I have known her for long. And she has been a Scrum Master for a 7-member high performing Scrum team. Now, this team has been working together for say 2 years now, and the composition has been stable. The last replacement that had happened in the team was like 6 months ago. And one morning, while she was sipping her chai on her balcony, she cribbed. This daily scrum is quite useless. There is nothing discussed there which my team already does not know. The team does not feel any value at. They are coming because they are a disciplined team, but I'm not sure whether they are participating wholeheartedly. She then popped a question to herself, thinking deeply. Is the daily scrum optional? And now we are doing good anyway. Maybe we can live without it. Pause for a moment and think. Isn't the daily scrum a so called good practice, best practice? Can we get rid of it? Now, debating on it for a while, Sneha thought of a logical step forward was to experiment and to find out. After all, Scrum is based on empiricism. That is an approach whereby the team continuously learns through experimentation, improves from mistakes. So Sneha decides to do an experiment. Now, for one of the sprint, she tries to get rid of. She tries to go ahead without the daily scrum, and the team decided not to do a daily scrum at the start of the day. And this was a very, very aligned team. Now, this may not work for any team, but this team was very aligned. Team members were sitting together, they went for lunches together, coffee breaks, chai breaks, whatever you name it. And yes, they whenever it was required to have a all hands on deck, they would come together. Someone would blow a whistle and they would come together, and within minutes they would have that huddle. So they would have a just in time, as and when required huddle. So if you look at it in that context, maybe the daily scrum was not required. So I'm not suggesting do not have a daily scrum, but look at the context. Do we really require what we are doing? And that brings us to the second principle, tailor as your needs. Best practices are good, but when they are not applied in context, they may backfire. Now, look at this picture again, and you see the Menti, code on your screen. Take the code and let us know which principles are best to next does it relate to. Now, I will recap again for those who have not taken the screenshot. So, we talked about resisting the herd mentality. We talked about tailoring the best practice based on your context because no size fits all. And we talked about being data driven, but deciding with the heart. So, what do you think that this picture will relate to? Right? And you can take the poll, and after a few minutes I will go and check the answers to the poll. I don't want to showcase the poll answers now, otherwise it will go into a herd mentality again. We would have to deploy a 10th man to kind of break that group thing.
Priya, just to let you know, people responded with different things in the last picture. They said Taylor, and some said data driven, and some said agility all the way. So that was the response to the last
Okay,
picture.
great. So now this is, I'll wait for while you take the poll. I will talk about another instance, right? So many times, we look at best practices, and we look at the data, and we see, oh, everything is correct. Let's go with the data, right? We look at the data, we do analysis and our retrospection. We say, yeah, the data is confusing, so this is correct. But what about our humanness? As a leader, can I take all my decisions based on data? So, heart is something which is intersection of instincts, intuitions, thoughts, passion, commitment, interest, and beliefs, right? And heart is something that you believe in, and it keeps you moving forward. Can we ignore the heart? Let me give you an example of Coca-Cola, right? Coca-Cola, Pepsi and Coca-Cola, everyone knows they are rivals. And Pepsi called out a legendary marketing campaign in 1975. It was called the Pepsi Challenge. People were asked to do a blind taste, right, of the cola. And there were two cups, one of Coke and one of Pepsi. And a large percentage of the testers preferred the Pepsi. When Coke heard this, definitely they were not happy, and they did their own Pepsi challenge. And they found that, yes, people like Pepsi. So the data was saying, yes, this Pepsi test is much better than what the Coke is. Convinced? So they kind of went ahead, and a new Coke was born and immediately died. Do you know why? They had tested on 200,000 people in the US, in the Canadian market, and most of them preferred the new Coke. But still, it didn't work. Again, data was confusing. But rather than what the mistake that they had done, rather than selling the new Coke and the classic Coke together, they just took away the classic Coke. And as everyone knows, classic Coke is a part of all celebrations in an American household. I know that people say that they don't remember what they did in the parties of Thanksgiving, Christmas, and other birthday parties, but they remember the food they ate, right? The Coke they drank, and classic Coke had an emotional connect with the American audience or American consumers, because Coke stood for tradition, family gatherings, and way more than just a cola. And if Coke had decided with heart and emotions, they wouldn't have spent millions of dollars reinventing themselves and suffered this marketing disaster. Classic example. Data can tell you many things, but it doesn't have a heart. It is up to us to take a decision with a heart. Now, let me look at the poll and see what you have taken with the poll. And this is what it looks like. And yes, good. We will move on to the next. Hold on. We will move on to the next section now, and let's see what this picture tells us about. And no need to take a poll. Too much poll is also not good. So you can type on the chat window and say, what is this? So we discussed about resisting the herd mentality. We talked about tailoring. We talked about be data driven, but decide with the heart. And of course, agility all the way. So, Praja, you may want to look at the chat and let me know. I will pause for a moment after I finish my narration as to what people thought is the answer is. Many times we hear that we have done it this way. Is probably said with a good intention, but because it's generally synonymous to something. If it is not broken, why fix it, man? Right? Maybe we don't need to fix it, but we may need to relook at it to uncover better ways of working. This is not to say that you should not learn from past success or failures, but simply relying on past achievements is nothing but following the herd, and that
So,
could lead to stagnation. Yes, Praja, what do we
so
get
yes, we
on the
have
chat?
Ayan Banerjee. Ayan Banerjee. That's his answer. Resisting the herd mentality. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, great.
Pitaki Karunaharan. Again, resist herd mentality. So it seems they are actually remembering
Get it.
your principles.
Exactly. That is the concept behind this presentation. More pictures, repeated, tell a story, and reinforce the learning. Thank you very much. So I'm happy that it is getting registered. So you know what? Then when we say that we have done it this way, it worked before. We are actually moving towards stagnation, right? We are moving towards herd mentality. So we discuss what worked well and why it worked well, which is good. And whenever at least when I hear this, we have done this before, and that's why it is working. And we have been doing this for a long time. That's why it is working. I feel this is the time to do a time out moment. Wait, let's stop and talk about it. And during the retrospection, when we talk about what went well, what didn't go right, what we should do to improve better, this is a time where we as a team can think, are we just blindly following the herd, right? Or are we really understanding why we are following this practice? Maybe we should understand the why we are doing it this way. Should we tweak the way we are working today to make it a little slightly better? Or sometimes maybe we should not do what we are doing, right? Maybe we can find a better way of doing this. Sure, should we reinvent this process to, instead of just tweaking it? Think about it. If everyone went on tweaking the best practice, we would never come up with disruptive products like, our way of working, like Uber or Henry Ford. Henry Ford once said that if I would have asked consumers what they wanted, they would have said we want faster horses. That is improving the efficiency of the current process. But he thought disruptively and came up with a motor car. So these are the judgment calls that we may have to think. And there is no substitute, of course, for thinking and talking about as a team. Because again, it is contextual, right? Now let us move on to the next picture. Look at it and take the poll and let me know from what you think this is. Best to next, right? We talked about three principles: resist the herd mentality, tailor it, and be data driven, decide with the heart, and of course, be agile all the way. So, what do you think this looks like? This looks like an adapter, right? Universal adapter. I'm sure when we go to different countries other than ours, we leverage this many a times. It leverages the best practices, but it adapts itself to the country's or the region's power or plug system. Now, some everyone tell me, do you think collaboration is good? Yes, no, on the chat while you take the poll. Brother, you will have to look at the chat.
Still, we don't have any. So, folks, please enter your answers.
Yeah, take this poll, and you have the picture already on your screen. Also, picture goes away when I show the poll. Okay, this is a picture. Let me know which principle of best to next fits in here. And we talked about resisting herd mentality. We talked about tailoring. We talked about driven by data, decided by the heart, and of course, be agile. Right? All this sums up to be being agile. So we always hear collaboration is good. We should collaborate. We should think together, come up with newer ideas because brings in innovation, creativity, and diversity of thoughts. I myself tell this all the time. But few years back, I heard a conference talk which kind of changed my view on collaboration. It was called the dark side of collaboration, and it seems that not every contact, every decision, or every idea needs collaboration. Now think about this. Now you will see a picture on your screen again. Think about this, and this is adapted from. This is of course David Snowden's sign-off-in framework, and where he says that every system falls into these four domains, right? Obvious, complicated, complex, and chaotic. Now, what is obvious? Obvious is that when you're giving an input to a system, and and it is it is one-to-one mapping. So you give an input, you get an output. That's where best practice will work, because that nothing is changing there. So if you have a documented way of doing, like a run book, as Sapna did in the beginning, it will work. But look at complicated. This is now one is to many. That means we have one input, but you can have possible 3 possible or 4 possible outputs. We may need some SME here to respond, to analyze, sense, analyze, and respond. And that's where we may need some amount of collaboration. Now look at chaotic. Now the example that was given was about the Indian traffic system. It is chaotic. But once you're in the system, you can recognize patterns. You know how this will work, right? We might need an SME. We will need an SME, subject matter expert, to adapt to the system. That is act, sense, and respond, right? And this seems to be high collaborative, and this is where we may need lots of collaboration. And last but not the least, complex, where there is one to many response. And but what happens is that, what is the difference between chaotic and complex? Chaotic is that system remains as it is, but in complex, the system itself changed. The COVID was a complex the system that we would say that had a complex effect on the ways we were working. Now here, it needs a lot of parallel experimentation, because we don't know what's going to happen. So parallel experimentation with subject matter expert may not need collaboration. So if you look at it, it is a contextual again. Collaboration is good. We need collaboration, but look at the context. Sometimes we think that it too much brainstorming, too much the brain thinking is happening, too many meetings are happening, where people could have gone to their desk and thought alone and come up with ideas. When they come up with ideas, we could get together and see what suits the best. Yeah. Now let me look at the poll and see what you guys have taken. And yes, okay, that looks good. All right. So now it's time to move to the next slide again. This should be easy enough. Now that you guys have gone through so many pictures, so many polls, now there is no poll here. You have to type on the chat, right? Which principle does this relate to? Best to next. And of course, we talked about, resist the herd mentality, tailor the practices best on your context, and look at data, but decide with the heart. Of course, agile all the way. And I will come to the story of Henry Ford again. And in 1914, it seems Henry Ford's company was experiencing low sales. Workforce was unreliable. Henry Ford looked at the data. Like all managers or all CEOs, he looked at the data. And of course, the data pointed him towards optimizing the way they were working, right? And by trimming cost, maybe, bringing more efficiencies in his workforce. But what did he do? It seems that he gave raise to all his employees, and this way he gained loyalty from his employees. They became appreciative. The employees became richer, and that's how they said that he created a new market segment of middle class buyers of his cars. Think about it. If he had just gone with the data, this wouldn't have happened, of course. Now, how do you bring in these kind of thinking with heart, while taking, of course, always thinking with your gut feeling may not work, but backed by data, right? How do you bring in these into your teams? Heard of the 6 thinking hats by Edward D. Bono? Yes? No? And you have to look at the chat again, Praja. What did people say in the first question? Which principle are they very able to relate to when they saw this picture?
Well, at the moment, some I think they answered earlier, but right now, nothing yet. Priya, just one small time check. We are reaching towards the end as well. So
Yeah.
you only have about 3 to 4 minutes as well.
Yes, so we are almost there. So the six thinking hats helps us to bring in, put us different hats before we take a decision. So the white is on facts, red is on feelings, say, blue is on controlling. Then we have creativity, yellow. Yellow is on always thinking positive. This is going to work, and black is always thinking negative. Why it will not work? And when we put in such kind of hats, we are able to take a decision not only based on data but also on feelings. And that brings me to the last and the most important picture of the day. You can take the poll and let me know from what it looks like. And for me, this is all about agility. The last 30 minutes that we discussed, I feel it's all about agility. Resisting the herd mentality. First, try to be different and then be better. It's all about agility. Tailor, adapt to the situation, the context, or the situation, or the context. It's all about agility. And let the data confess, but decide with the heart. It's all about empathy and agility. So it is agility all the way. And because we are short of time, I am moving ahead. This is a recap slide. It's about using the research best practices, but always in the quest for the next. So resist the herd mentality. Ask yourself always, how can we do it better? Tailor, because no size fits all. And be driven by data, but decide with the heart. Above all this sums up to being agile all the way. And that's me. Please do connect with me on LinkedIn and on Twitter. We would love to have this continue this conversation in our quest for the next. Thank you.
Priya, we can take one or two questions if the audience have any questions. Just shoot them now, folks. We have a minute or two. Any questions that you'd like to ask, Priya? Okay, so Priya, it seems that um, they want to probably process what you said as well and understand it a bit more. So, folks, if there isn't any more questions, uh, we would like to wrap up. So, thank you, Priya, for taking the time and joining RSG Sri Lanka, the inaugural Sri Lankan Scrum gathering, and making our conference that much better by sharing that very interesting and very colorful and interactive session. Appreciate everything, your participation, Priya.
Thank you very much. And I hope you guys enjoyed it and registered the points that we talked about. Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think they did. I think they did, Priya. So, folks, before we wrap up, please note that quiz number 1 has closed. So there is quiz number 2 that's coming up. Admins, quiz number 2 is uh, is on the stage chat. So, you folks, you can go and see what that is and take part in that very interesting quiz. So, in which year did Jeff Sutherland and Ken Swaber present a paper on the Scrum framework at the OOPSLA workshop in Austin, USA? Oh, that should be an easy question, right? For all you Scrum enthusiasts. So, folks, while you do that, I just want to let you know that the next session is going to be also yet another great session, and it is going to be not one but more than one speaker, many speakers. We have some leaders from large enterprises, a panel discussion on humanizing digital transformation. So stay tuned. this will start at 3:30, same place, the stage. So be there at 3:30.